Hello, today I'm going to go back to focusing on tourism a little bit. And I'm going to ask the question, will Vietnam have a new era of traveling in the future after this pandemic? Are things going to change? Or I think they're going to change, and I think they're going to change for the better, and I'll tell you why towards the end of this video. But to understand tourism in Vietnam, you have to go back to like 1986. I think it was around 1986, mid 80s. They opened their doors to tourism. They saw that Cambodia and Thailand and all these other places in Southeast Asia were making a lot of money off of tourism, so they opened their doors to tourists. And before that, no tourists could come to Vietnam. It was a closed country. It was absolutely closed. And so what happened was you had all these young backpackers that solo backpackers and people backpacking with their friends, all young people that usually have well-to-do parents that gave them $5,000 or $10,000 after they finished either high school or college and told them, go get the experience of traveling the world, you know, you'll never get to do it again, and giving them some money to travel around. Or they were just on their own money and they just saved up money and decided to go backpacking around the world. Well, Vietnam became, and Southeast Asia in general, became known as a cheap place to go, and a cheap place to go, so that created a big party scene. And because they could come over here and they could get beers for 25 cents, they could get a hostel room for $1 or $2 a night. If you don't know what a hostel is just a big room. They call them youth hostels because only young people would stay in them, but only young people are crazy enough to stay in them. But there were just all these bunk beds, and you just basically rented a bed for the night, you know. And so for $1 or $2 a night, there's your accommodations, and then $1 or $2 to eat a good meal. So it got to be known to be a cheap place to go, and that brought all these young people just in droves to Southeast Asia and to Vietnam. And they would do tours, and they did get into the culture a little bit. But what happened, and I'm mainly talking about Bui Vien Street, or Pedestrian Street, Walking Street in Saigon. That's known as Pedestrian Street because you couldn't get a car down it at night. It's just shoulder to shoulder people, and they're people from all over the world. You know, that's where if you go to travel to Vietnam, you don't know anything about Vietnam, you don't know where to go or what to do. Well, you come here and you're in District 1, right in the heart of the city, and Bui Vien Street is right there in the middle of the city, and that's where all the tourists are. So they opened all these tour guides and tour businesses, and so that's where all tourists would go. So you were mixed in with all these backpackers, thousands of backpackers. And so yeah, at any rate, they started coming over here, and what Vietnam did, well, businessmen, and usually from other countries, foreign investors, and even people from Vietnam, they opened all these, they wanted to cater to these young people. So they opened all these loud nightclubs, and it just became nightclub after nightclub, and the music's so loud that they're just competing with each other. You can't even distinguish one nightclub's music to the other. And with that opened massage parlors, and there was a massage parlor on every corner, still is today. And with that brought pickpockets and minor theft, what you would find in any city anywhere in the world in a tourist area, but even more so because it was so geared to all these young people, that it brought prostitution with the massage parlors. And it was known that you could get some drugs over the counter at pharmacies, so they opened pharmacies all along the place. They have nitrous oxide balloons that they still have today. You buy a balloon full of nitrous oxide and you'd see people giggling and falling out of their chairs. And you go by these people selling little knickknacks and souvenirs, and a lot of these, usually older ladies, would have these suitcases full of cigarettes and selling different kinds of cigarettes, and you'd hear them under their breath say, marijuana, marijuana. It's highly illegal. All this stuff is illegal, but they were just overlooking it. The authorities overlooked it. It was full of corruption, and they just saw the money coming in and they just let it slide. And so anyway, you had all this going on, and even when I started coming over here in 2013, I didn't know any other place to go at first, and I went to Bowie Van Street, and I was at a point in my life where I was single, but I was getting older, and I didn't want to stay in a hostel. I rented cheap hotel rooms for $20 to $25 a night. There were decent places to sleep, and they were, you know, 2 or 3 star hotels, and just because I was traveling on a budget. And I would go down to Bowie Van Street, and I was more not a participant but a spectator. I like to people watch. I'm a people watcher, and I would go down to Bowie Van Street, and I would I would get a table right on the street, and, you know, order beers and food, and sit there and munch on food and drink beers and watch these people falling out of their chairs and get all the debauchery and crazy stuff going on. All the girls chasing these guys to try to get them into the massage parlors, and oh, it was a riot. It was interesting, but it'd get to be like 9 or 10 o'clock, and the place doesn't start hopping until midnight, but it'd get to be 9 or 10, 11 o'clock, and I would pack up and go back to my hotel room, because it got crazy, really crazy. The later it got, the crazier it got, and it went on all night, 24 hours a day. And so anyway, fast forward to a year and a half ago, and basically what these people were doing, the visa situation. The visa situation was you could get a 30 or 90-day visa, and if you got a 30-day visa, of course you could get it renewed to another 30 days, and you'd have 90 days or 60 days. But anyway, what they were doing was, the law stated that you had to, after your tourist visa expired, you had to leave the country. Well, that's all it said, is that you had to leave the country. So there was left a big loophole where these young kids, party animals, were going across and I'm speaking specifically where I live, and close to Ho Chi Minh City. They were taking a bus and going to the Cambodian border, and they would stamp out of Vietnam, stamp into Cambodia, buy a visa for Cambodia, and then they would literally just turn around and walk back through the border, or ride the bus back through the border, and get their stamp back into Vietnam, so they're good for another 30 or 90 days. And they were staying here, some of them for years like that. They were basically living here, and they were doing they called it a visa migration, or a visa run, or a quarterly migration. They even had it was so like clockwork, that they had tourist services that had buses that would load up with tourists full on these buses, and they take them over to Cambodia, and they'd have a tour guide on the bus that would take everybody's passports, stamp them all out of Vietnam, stamp them all back into Cambodia, stamp them all back into Vietnam, and they were good to go. It took the whole process from Ho Chi Minh City to Cambodia and back was like, I don't know, it cost you like $30, and it took about 6 hours. So one day, and you're good for another 90 days or whatever. So, and then there was people like me that were I'm on long-term visas. I'm a good boy. I had all my ducks in a row and had all my documents checked and everything, and got a long-term visa. I got a year-long visa. But so anyway, what happened was, a year and a half ago, they shut down the borders because of the pandemic. And when they shut down the borders, that caused all these people that were doing these visa runs, that caused them a problem, because they couldn't get back into Vietnam. And you know, the border was closed. So that got rid of thousands upon thousands of tourists, and people who are expats but living here on tourist visas. It just got rid of all of them. And when that happened, all these nightclubs and massage parlors and all these people selling trinkets on the street, all of a sudden they lost, you know, 3/4 of their business, and some of them started closing down. And when they started closing down, local people started buying up these places and reopening them as shops, little mom and pop shops, and traditional cafes geared more to the local people, because all the tourists were going. So they had to cater to the local people. So it caused it to go down about 10 notches in the craziness, and became a place where little to no tourists. But then as time went on, then they started these total lockdowns a couple months ago, totally locking down everything. All non-essential businesses closed, so all the nightclubs and all the bars, all the restaurants, everything, the cafes, everything shut down. So, and they're still shut down today. But that brings me to why I think Vietnam, I think they're cracking down on visas right now. They're really cracking down. You've got to have all of your ducks in a row to stay here. And I think what they're doing is they're taking this COVID situation as an opportunity to clean up the streets, so to speak. They're wanting to gear towards, and this is my opinion, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, they're going to gear towards, you know, try to get in, what am I trying to say? They're trying to get in people like me now. I have a family. I have a family of 4, a little baby on the way. And I wouldn't take my family down to Bowie Van Street, you know, if I had a family back when I first started coming here. I wouldn't take my family down there. And I think now, if they open back up, and they open back up more towards the local traffic and catering more to the locals, I think you would see more of the traditions and cultures of Vietnam, which is, I mean, there's thousands of years of culture and tradition in Vietnam, and there's that'd be a good way to mingle with the locals, to go down there now after, of course, COVID is gone and everything opens back up. I would take my family down there, and I think that's what they're trying to gear more towards. People like me who have a family, you know, a family of 4 can come over here, and they would spend as much on tourism as, you know, 5 times as much as one backpacker or one of those young people on a budget traveling around the world. And then you've got your retirees, people who have retired and then want to come over and see Vietnam. They want to see Southeast Asia, and I think they're going more towards that direction, to where they're gonna crack down on visas. You can only get a 30-day or 60-day, 90-day visa, and stay here for your vacation and then go home. And I think you know, that's what they're gearing more towards, and they'll have more qualified people here working jobs on long-term visas, because a lot of these people were working illegally on tourist visas. They weren't supposed to work on tourist visas, but they were working teaching English, and they didn't have the qualifications, and they didn't, you know, it just wasn't, you know, I think Vietnam's doing the right thing, and they're gonna cater more towards a family-oriented and more settled down type of traveler, if you will. So anyway, that's the way I see things going, and I could be wrong. It could flip-flop after the virus is over. They could just flip-flop right back to the way it was before, and I just don't see that happening. From what I see, it's going to be, like I said, more geared towards families and retirees. And one thing Vietnam needs to get is a retirement visa. They don't have a retirement visa. So, you know, Thailand has a retirement visa. Vietnam has an investor's visa, but you have to have, I think it's $130,000 to invest. And once you invest, that money has to stay in that investment or that bank or whatever. So you basically have to have $130,000 laying around, which I don't. Hopefully I can just stay here. I don't know if I'm going to stay here or retire in America. I really don't. I do things day to day and week to week, and just go with the flow. But at any rate, that's what I have. That's what I think is going to happen, and I think there's going to be a new face to tourism in Vietnam. Not that there wasn't people that were taking advantage of the tours and seeing the culture and the traditions and going to the temples and the you know, Vietnam has the largest cave in the world. For example, the Sun Dong Cave is the largest cave in the world, and it was just discovered, I think, in the 80s or 90s, and by a farmer. It was found on his farmland. But at any rate, that's what I think is going to happen. If you disagree with me, comment down below. If you have any input on it whatsoever, if you agree with me, comment down below. And I hope this intrigues some of you that have families and want to come over and see Vietnam, I think that the best time to come is going to be right after they open the borders again, right after this COVID is over. I think is going to be the best time to come, because it's still going to be cheap, and it's I can get you, and I consider anybody on here watching my videos friends and family, and even if we don't know each other, we're getting to know each other through comments and through chatting. And what a better way to get to know somebody by going on vacation with them. And I can get you discounted or even free tours, anybody and that comes over and visits me in particular. So like my parents came over and we did city tours and street food tours, and basically what we did is we took like half of the money we would have paid to go on a tour and tipped the tour guide a huge tip. So we didn't pay for the tour was free, and we just, instead of paying $40 a person, we chipped in $20 a person and gave the tour guide a massive tip, and that made everybody happy. So at any rate, I hope you come over here. I hope you decide to travel Vietnam, Southeast Asia. There's a lot to see over here, a lot to, things that will change your whole outlook on life. Just sometimes seeing one thing that'll just change everything you feel about the world and Southeast Asia and just yourself, and it'll open up a lot of doors and windows for you to see different things. So anyway, with that said, I'm out. This is kind of a long video, so I will talk to you soon. I'll see you on the next video. Oh, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share. Okay, out. Goodbye.